Vacationing in a foreign country had always been on my bucket list, and finally, the opportunity arrived. My friends and I booked a tour to explore ancient ruins and historic sites, immersing ourselves in the rich culture and history of the place. Our excitement was palpable as we arrived, ready to embark on our adventure. Our tour guide, Carlos, was a friendly and knowledgeable local who spoke excellent English. He greeted us with a warm smile and a firm handshake, immediately putting us at ease. Carlos seemed to know everything about the ruins, the history of the region, and even the local legends. He was the perfect guide, making the experience both educational and entertaining. The first few days of the tour were incredible. We explored ancient temples, marveled at intricate carvings, and soaked in the stories of long-forgotten civilizations. Carlos was always there, leading us through the maze of history with enthusiasm and expertise. On the fourth day, Carlos took us to a remote site that wasn't on the official tour itinerary. He mentioned that this particular ruin was rarely visited by tourists and had a special, almost mystical significance. We were intrigued and eager to see something off the beaten path. As we arrived at the site, the atmosphere changed. The air felt thicker, and an eerie silence settled over the area. The ruins were overgrown with vegetation, giving them a wild and untamed appearance. Carlos led us through the crumbling structures, pointing out various features and explaining their historical context. As we wandered deeper into the ruins, the ancient stones towering around us, Carlos's voice echoed in the silence, creating an almost haunting effect. As we moved further in, I began to feel a growing unease. The shadows seemed to lengthen, and the light dimmed as if the sun was struggling to penetrate the dense foliage. Suddenly, Carlos stopped and turned to face us. His expression had changed. His usual warm smile was replaced with a serious, almost grim look. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. "This place is known for strange occurrences. Many people who come here report seeing things that aren't there or feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. We exchanged uneasy glances, but curiosity got the better of us." "What kind of things?" one of my friends asked. Carlos hesitated before answering. "Apparitions, voices, and disappearances. There are stories of people vanishing without a trace, never to be seen again." A chill ran down my spine. The idea of being lost in these ancient ruins was terrifying, but Carlos's calm demeanor and the way he presented the information made it seem like just another part of the tour. We continued exploring, but the mood had shifted. The once exciting adventure now felt like a perilous journey into the unknown. Every rustle of leaves and distant sound made us jump, our nerves on edge. As we rounded a corner, we found ourselves in a small enclosed courtyard. The walls were adorned with faded carvings, depicting scenes of ancient rituals and sacrifices. In the center of the courtyard stood a stone altar, weathered by time. Carlos walked up to the altar and placed his hand on it. "This is where many of the strange occurrences are said to happen," he explained. "Some say it's a portal to another realm, a place where the spirits of the past still linger." We gathered around the altar, trying to absorb the gravity of his words. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew through the courtyard, sending leaves and dust swirling around us. The temperature seemed to drop, and a sense of foreboding filled the air. Carlos looked at us, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave," he said urgently. Now, we didn't need to be told twice. We turned and started making our way back through the ruins, the sense of urgency propelling us forward. But as we navigated the maze of ancient stones, I realized something horrifying. Carlos was no longer with us. Panic set in as we called out for him, our voices echoing through the ruins. There was no response. We retraced our steps, searching every corner, but Carlos had vanished without a trace. The realization hit us like a ton of bricks. Our guide had disappeared, just like the stories he had told us. Fear gripped us as we huddled together, trying to figure out what to do. We were in an unfamiliar place, miles from civilization, with no guide and no idea how to get back. The ruins, once a fascinating glimpse into the past, now felt like a prison. We decided to stick together and make our way back to the entrance, hoping to find help. The journey was harrowing, every shadow and sound amplifying our terror. As we stumbled through the ruins, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something or someone was following us. Finally, After what felt like hours, we emerged from the ruins, exhausted and terrified. We made our way to the nearest village and reported Carlos's disappearance to the local authorities. They organized a search party, but despite their efforts, Carlos was never found. The experience left us shaken to the core. The mystery of Carlos's disappearance haunted us, and the once thrilling adventure turned into a nightmare we would never forget. The ancient ruins, with their secrets and dark history, had claimed another victim. I still can't explain what happened. The memory of that tour and the disappearance of our guide remains etched in my mind. I arrived at the Grand Willow Hotel late in the afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across its grand facade. The hotel was an impressive sight, a relic from the Victorian era with its intricate architecture and aura of old-world charm. I was excited for my stay, looking forward to a relaxing weekend away from the city life. The lobby was magnificent, with high ceilings adorned with chandeliers that glittered like stars. The scent of polished wood and aged leather filled the air. As I checked in, the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, handed me my room key. "Room 217, she said, her smile faltering for a brief moment. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call." I made my way to the second floor, admiring the hotel's opulent decor. The hallway was dimly lit, with antique lamps casting a soft golden glow. My room was at the end of the corridor. As I inserted the key and pushed the door open, I felt a slight chill, as if a cold breeze had slipped through the door with me. The room was beautifully furnished, with a four-poster bed, elegant drapes, and a fireplace that added to its cozy atmosphere. I unpacked my bags and decided to freshen up before dinner. As I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the lights flickered momentarily. I dismissed it as a minor electrical issue and continued getting ready. Dinner at the hotel's restaurant was delightful. The food was excellent, and the ambience was perfect. I returned to my room feeling content and ready to relax. However, as soon as I stepped inside, I noticed a distinct coldness. The temperature had dropped significantly, and I could see my breath in the air. Ignoring the chill, I changed into my pajamas and climbed into bed, hoping to get a good night's sleep. I was just about to drift off when I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. They were slow and deliberate, moving closer to my room. My heart began to race as the footsteps stopped right outside my door. I listened intently, but after a few moments of silence, I heard nothing more. I convinced myself that it was just another guest and tried to go back to sleep. But then, I heard a soft knock on the door. My stomach tightened with fear. I lay still, hoping whoever it was would go away. The knock came again, louder this time. Gathering my courage, I crept out of bed and approached the door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw nothing but an empty hallway. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door slightly and peering out. The corridor was deserted, the only sound being the distant hum of the hotel's heating system. I closed the door and locked it, feeling a growing sense of unease. Back in bed, I pulled the covers up to my chin, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. The night was restless. I was constantly awakened by strange noises, soft whispers, creaking floorboards, and the persistent sound of footsteps. Each time I looked around, I found nothing out of the ordinary. By the time morning arrived, I was exhausted and jittery. I went down for breakfast, hoping a good meal would help calm my nerves. The dining room was bustling with guests, all seemingly oblivious to any strange happenings. I found a seat by the window and ordered a hearty breakfast. As I waited, I overheard a conversation at the next table. An elderly couple was discussing the history of the hotel. "Did you know this place is supposed to be haunted?" The woman whispered to her husband. "They say a tragic event happened here many years ago." Curiosity piqued. I leaned closer, trying to catch more of their conversation. They mentioned a fire that had ravaged the hotel in the early 1900s, claiming several lives. One of the victims was a young woman who was said to have been waiting for her lover to return. Her ghost was rumored to haunt room 217, where she had spent her last moments. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was some truth to the story. Determined to find out more, I approached the receptionist after breakfast and asked her about the hotel's history. She seemed reluctant to talk at first, but eventually shared what she knew. Room 2117 has always been a bit peculiar, she said, choosing her words carefully. Guests often report strange occurrences, flickering lights, cold drafts, and unexplained noises. Some even claim to have seen a figure standing by the window. I returned to my room with a mix of fear and fascination. I spent the day exploring the hotel and its surroundings, trying to keep my mind off the previous night's events. But as evening approached, I couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. That night, the strange occurrences began again. The temperature in my room plummeted, and I could hear soft whispers as if someone was trying to speak to me. The footsteps in the hallway returned, this time accompanied by a faint sobbing sound. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened, paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, the figure appeared at the foot of my bed. She was translucent, dressed in an old-fashioned gown, her eyes filled with sorrow. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The ghostly figure reached out towards me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. Just as quickly as she appeared, she vanished, leaving me trembling and breathless. I turned on every light in the room, trying to dispel the darkness and the lingering chill. I knew I couldn't spend another night in that room. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel, my nerves frayed and my mind racing. As I left, the receptionist gave me a sympathetic look. "I hope you find peace," she said softly. I drove away from the Grand Willow Hotel, unable to shake the feeling that I had encountered something truly otherworldly. The experience left me deeply unsettled. Our trip to the cabin in the woods was supposed to be a relaxing getaway. My friends and I had been planning it for months, eager to escape the city and immerse ourselves in nature. The cabin was nestled deep in the mountains, surrounded by towering pines and a serene lake. It was the perfect setting for a peaceful retreat. We arrived late in the afternoon. The cabin itself was rustic but charming, with a large porch that overlooked the lake. Inside, it was cozy and welcoming, with a fireplace that promised warm evenings filled with laughter and stories. After settling in, we decided to explore the area. The air was crisp and fresh, and the sounds of nature were all around us. We hiked through the woods, admiring the beauty of the forest and the tranquility it offered. As the sun began to set, we made our way back to the cabin, eager to start a campfire and enjoy the evening. We gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The sky was clear, and the stars were brilliant, casting a gentle glow over the cabin and the surrounding trees. It was the perfect night, filled with the kind of simple pleasures that city life often lacks. As the night grew darker, the forest seemed to come alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, and the distant howl of a coyote created a symphony of wilderness. We continued to enjoy ourselves, unaware that our peaceful night was about to take a sinister turn. It started with a faint noise, barely audible over our laughter and the crackling fire, a soft rustling in the trees, like something moving through the underbrush. At first, we dismissed it as an animal, perhaps a deer or a raccoon, but the noise persisted, growing louder and more distinct. "Did you hear that?" Allison asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Probably just an animal," I replied, trying to reassure her. We're in the middle of the woods, after all. But the unease was spreading. We all fell silent, straining to hear the source of the noise. The rustling continued, moving closer to the cabin. I stood up, peering into the darkness, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there. The fire cast long shadows, making it difficult to see beyond the flickering light. "Maybe we should go inside," Aaron suggested, his voice steady but cautious. We agreed, gathering our things and heading into the cabin. Once inside, we locked the door and drew the curtains, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off as our imaginations playing tricks on us. The cabin was warm and comforting, and we soon found ourselves relaxing again. We played cards, told more stories, and tried to recapture the carefree atmosphere of earlier. But the sense of unease lingered, like a shadow that refused to be chased away. As the night wore on, the noises outside grew more frequent and unsettling. The rustling in the trees was joined by faint footsteps, moving slowly around the cabin. We exchanged uneasy glances, our nerves fraying with each passing moment. "I think someone's out there," Georgia whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Let's not jump to conclusions," I said, trying to remain calm. It could still be an animal. But deep down, I was starting to feel the same fear. The footsteps were too deliberate, too human. We huddled together, our eyes fixed on the door, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door, startling us all. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. The knock came again, louder and more insistent. I took a deep breath, mustering the courage to approach the door. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no answer, just silence. I looked back at my friends, their faces pale with fear. I reached for the doorknob, hesitating for a moment before slowly turning it. I opened the door a crack, peering into the darkness. There was no one there. The porch was empty, the forest silent. I stepped outside, looking around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, and I quickly retreated back inside, locking the door behind me. "There's no one there," I said, trying to sound reassuring. It must have been the wind, but we all knew better. The rest of the night was tense, every noise amplified by our fear. We huddled together, jumping at every creak and groan of the old cabin. Sleep was impossible, our minds racing with thoughts of what could be lurking outside. As dawn finally broke, we were exhausted and on edge. The morning light brought some relief, but the fear lingered. We decided to cut our trip short and head back to the city. The cabin now felt oppressive and dangerous. We packed up our things and left as quickly as we could, the sense of relief growing with each mile we put between us and the cabin. Looking back, I still can't explain what happened that night. Whether it was an overactive imagination, a prank, or something more sinister, I'll never know. But one thing is certain, our trip to the cabin in the woods left us with a story we would never forget. When my family decided to rent a beach house for our summer vacation, I was thrilled. The idea of spending a week by the ocean, with the sound of waves crashing and the smell of salty air, was a dream come true. The house itself was beautiful, with large windows that offered a stunning view of the beach and the ocean beyond. It was the perfect place to relax and unwind. We arrived on a sunny afternoon, the sky a brilliant blue and the temperature just right. The house was even more impressive in person, with a spacious deck, modern furnishings, and a private path leading directly to the beach. We quickly unpacked and settled in, eager to start our vacation. The first few days were blissful. We spent our time swimming, building sandcastles, and exploring the nearby town. In the evenings, we would gather on the deck, watching the sunset and enjoying each other's company. It was everything I had hoped for and more. On the fourth night, something changed. We were having a barbecue on the deck, the smell of grilled food mixing with the salty air. Laughter filled the air as we shared stories and reminisced about past vacations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the beach, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. It was then that I noticed something strange. A shadow moving along the edge of the property, just beyond the reach of the deck lights. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a stray dog or a raccoon, but the shadow was too tall, too human. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make out what it was, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Did you see that?" I asked my sister, who was sitting next to me. "See what?" she replied, looking up from her plate. "I thought I saw someone out there by the beach," she shrugged. "Probably just a local taking a walk. This is a public beach after all." I nodded, trying to brush off the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The laughter and conversation continued, but my eyes kept drifting back to the darkness beyond the deck, searching for any sign of the shadow. We eventually called it a night and headed inside. The house was quiet and comforting, a stark contrast to the darkness outside. I locked the doors and windows, double-checking to make sure everything was secure before heading to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to a strange noise, a soft scraping sound, like something brushing against the side of the house. I sat up, my heart pounding, and listened. The sound continued, growing louder and more insistent. I crept out of bed and made my way to the window, peeking out into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing, The beach was empty, the moon casting a silvery glow over the sand. Then I saw it, a figure standing by the edge of the deck, partially hidden by the shadows. It was the same figure I had seen earlier, tall and motionless. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it was watching the house, its gaze fixed on the windows. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. Should I wake my family? Call the police? The figure hadn't done anything yet, but its presence alone was enough to send chills down my spine. I decided to keep watch, hoping it would leave on its own. Hours passed, and the figure remained, barely moving. I eventually dozed off, exhausted from the tension and lack of sleep. When I woke up, the sun was rising and the figure was gone. I sighed with relief, hoping it had been a one-time occurrence. The next day, I tried to enjoy the vacation as best as I could, but the memory of the figure lingered. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see it standing there again. My family noticed my unease and asked if everything was okay, but I didn't want to worry them. I told myself it was probably just a prank or a harmless local. That night, we decided to watch a movie in the living room. The large windows offered a perfect view of the beach, now cloaked in darkness. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding as the movie played, the eerie music and suspenseful scenes only adding to my anxiety. Halfway through the movie, I saw it again. The figure, standing just beyond the reach of the porch lights, watching us. My heart raced as I tried to keep my voice steady. "Guys, I think there's someone outside," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My family turned to look, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. My dad grabbed a flashlight and headed to the door, my mom and sister following close behind. I stayed inside, my eyes glued to the figure. As my dad shone the flashlight into the darkness, the figure stepped forward, revealing a face partially obscured by a hood. It was a man, his eyes glinting in the light. He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at us. "Can we help you?" My dad called out, trying to sound authoritative. The man didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. We locked the doors and called the local police, who promised to send a patrol car to check the area. But by the time they arrived, the man was long gone. The police assured us that it was probably just a vagrant or someone playing a prank, but their words did little to ease my fear. The next few nights were tense, every noise and shadow sending my heart racing. We kept the lights on and stayed together, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. On our last night at the beach house, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. I froze, listening as they moved closer, then stopped outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, the fear paralyzing me. The doorknob turned slowly, and the door creaked open. Standing in the doorway was the man, his hooded face obscured by the darkness. He stepped into the room, his eyes fixed on me. I scrambled to the side of the bed, reaching for anything I could use as a weapon. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he took another step forward, his hand reaching out. I swung a lamp at him, the base connecting with his arm. He grunted in pain and backed away, then turned and fled the room. I ran to my parents' room, my heart pounding. They called the police again, who arrived quickly and searched the house and surrounding area. They found no sign of the man, but they did discover footprints leading away from the house, disappearing into the sand. We left the beach house the next morning, cutting our vacation short. The experience had left us shaken and on edge, the sense of violation and fear lingering long after we returned home. The man was never found, and we never learned his motives or why he had targeted us. To this day, the memory of that night haunts me. The beach house holds a darker and sinister place in my mind. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for more terrifying tales. See you in the next video.